Reimagine your life by becoming an RN at Duke Health, a recognized health system in North Carolina's area known as the Triangle, home to award-winning restaurants, beautiful scenic spaces, and an eclectic art and music scene. You'll have plenty to enjoy in the area and cities beyond. What's more, you'll have a career filled with purpose and opportunity, matched by benefits that best support your wellness, family, and future, offering sign-on bonuses and relocation. Apply today at dukenursing.org.
The Big Bark, listen up dog owners, it's for you, all you canine lovers. It's your favorite podcast, The Big Bark, with your host, Darragh and canine co-hosts, Bruno and Milly. The Big Bark.
Hello and a very big welcome to The Big Bark, the show that brings you the latest news from the canine world. I'm your host, Darragh. And I'm joined, as always, by my two amazing canine co-hosts, Bruno and Milly, who are just kind of floating around the studio here somewhere. Milly had a ball there a while ago, so I'd say she's happy, feckin' enough with that anyway. Now, we had a huge, and I mean massive, response to our episode last week. And so many people, after hearing that episode, are really looking forward to the Pups in the Park event at Malahide Castle that we were talking about all last week, and that is happening on the May Bank holiday weekend. So Saturday, April 31st and Sunday, May 1st. So that's the dates that's happening. And don't forget, we're running our competition to win tickets for you and 3 of your friends over on our Instagram. The tickets are valid for the Sunday, so Sunday, May the 1st. So that'll be a nice little treat if you got 4 tickets for that, wouldn't it? And all the information for the competition is up on our Instagram, and the closing date for entry is next Friday, the 15th of April. Winners will be announced on Sunday, the 17th of April. That is Easter Sunday, so we're giving you a nice little present there for Easter. It's not an Easter egg because, you know, like chocolate and all being bad for doggies. Okay, and the next thing, I suppose, to remind you, the Big Bark will be recording live on Sunday, the 1st of May, from the event itself. So that's why we're giving away the tickets for that day, because we're recording live ourselves there. And sure, whoever wins the tickets, do be sure to, if you see us floating around, not sure Bruno and Milly are going to be joining us yet, because I fear they will make hames of the stage if they come on stage. But sure, look, we'll see close to the time whether Bruno and Milly are actually joining us. But yeah, we're recording on stage live on Sunday the 1st of May, and that's going to actually be one of our first live recordings that we've done in quite a while, and our first in-person recording. So just putting it out there, if I happen to be carrying a hip flask of something to calm my nerves, well, look, I won't be drinking on stage anyway. Let's see, so yeah, for all information on Pups in the Park, check out Pups in the Park _ on Instagram. And for the full lineup and information on everything that's going on, visit pupsinthepark.ie. So you can, if you want any more information, message them on Instagram too, or give them an email. You'll find the contact form on pupsinthepark.ie as well. And now back to this week. And we love talking about doggy behaviour and behavioural issues on this show. And again, we're back once again today to talk about all things dog training. And to do that, we're welcoming a trainer who has not been on with us before, someone that we've been hoping to go on now for the bones of 6 to 8 months, I suppose. And that is Mack.
With fast funding up to $10,000 available through Net Credit, our online application process was designed to get the money you need quickly if approved. You can borrow an amount that meets your needs and repay in a way that works for your financial situation. And we report on-time payments to credit bureaus, so you can build credit history as you repay. See what Net Credit can do for you today. Check your eligibility without affecting your credit score at netcredit.com. All Net Credit loans and lines of credit are offered by a member of the Net Credit family of companies or one of our lending partners. Visit netcredit.com/partners for more information.
From Goodboy Dog Training in Darragh. And Mac, a very big welcome to the Big Back.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on, man. And this is a long time in the making. I think you emailed me, maybe 6 months ago, was it?
Definitely, yeah. I suppose we kind of went off air in October for a couple of months. I was in college myself, so just trying to juggle everything was a bit hard. Mac, give us a bit of background for people who might not have heard of you. Give a bit of background on yourself.
Sure. So my name is Mack Mirahmadi. I am a dog trainer. I'm based in Dunleary. I've had my business now, not actually that long. My business has been going for about coming up to 3 years, and it's kind of evolved more rapidly than I could ever imagine. I suppose with the unfortunate help of COVID, it seemed to excel it. And I kind of got into dogs when I was quite young, and my parents were big into horses and all that kind of thing. So animals were always around. And when I was younger, and it was dogs, I was memorizing I remember I had a book. I've said this before to somebody. I had a book of different breeds, and I memorized every single breed in it when I was like 14 or 15. And it definitely wasn't a specific career choice. It just kind of evolved this way, but it's been going well.
Brilliant. And like you said, you've been in business now about 3 years, you say. So like that would be just before COVID nearly. What was it like going through COVID just after starting up a new dog training business? Did you find it hard initially, or?
Yeah, it was strange. So I'd been doing it a good bit before COVID, but I really set up my social media and my everything else, like the kind of social aspect of the business, a few months before COVID. But the actual training and working with people have been a good bit before that. So yeah, it was weird, because all of a sudden, once I started going online, obviously you get a lot more exposure online than what you would word of mouth. And so I was getting busy, which was great. And then all of a sudden COVID came, and I had I was kind of booked months in advance. And obviously at the time, nobody knew what this thing was. And so everything stopped. And I ended up doing all my sessions online, which actually, weirdly I actually enjoyed it. I didn't enjoy it more than being hands-on with clients and whatnot. But I think you got a different perspective from people online. There maybe wasn't as much pressure, and you really got to sit down and have a deep discussion about, say, the dog's behavior and why they're doing certain things, and figure out where they're at. So it was a different, definitely a different perspective from the client point of view, if that makes sense. And then also the thing that I just had to turn to was just people still had dogs, and obviously people were getting dogs. So I was I'm just going to post content to try and help people on Instagram and that kind of thing. So, it all very much went online very quickly and stayed that way for a long time.
Yeah, like myself, I suppose the last time I've actually done, I suppose, a face-to-face interview would be just well over 2 years ago now. I'm still kind of doing everything online myself, but hopefully we'll be back to real face-to-face stuff soon enough. Mac, as you were mentioning there about COVID, a lot of people did get dogs during the start of the pandemic, and I know we've definitely touched on this on the show before. I spoke with Tim Kirby and Pep on about this, and it was almost like there was a puppy and a pandemic going on as well, where so many people were getting pups. And do you find, I suppose, what they didn't realise at the time was that a lot of people didn't realise they were going to be going back working to an office. And do you think people actually give any thought really of what would actually come at that stage?
Yeah, you're spot on, man. I think it's weird because it's a bit of a catch-22, because it's good that people are getting dogs, right? But where they're getting the dogs from is really important, and what genetics the dogs are coming with, and all of this stuff, and it all plays into each other. And I don't think people realized how much work it is. And I think it did turn into a bit of a vicious cycle, because what you have is, as if like Ireland wasn't already a kind of excuse the pun, a breeding ground for puppy farmers, and it excelled hugely with COVID, and because the demand went through the roof. And traditionally, if you're, let's say you're looking to get a puppy, right, and you want to get it very ethically, and you want to get it from someone who's breeding for the right reasons, right? So someone who's not breeding for monetary reasons, but someone who's breeding to kind of better the health line or better the evolutionary of a certain breed, right? Those people are very important. But it's not like you can just call up an excellent breeder and get a dog. There's a waiting list. There's an interview process. You could be waiting years. I certainly know people that have waited 2-3 years for the right dog. I've waited a long time for my dog. And so it's what you got is a huge demand very quickly. So people were just getting whatever dog that they could, right? Which does have problems. And that paired with maybe not getting the dog from the most ethical background, and then someone who doesn't maybe have that much understanding of dogs, who's maybe never had dogs, who gets it, feels a bit out of their depth, who can't get hands-on training because restrictions, right? And so then they go back to the office. Then of course you are getting things like separation anxiety. But that for me, and anyway from the dogs that I've seen, separation anxiety is kind of the least of the worries. It's been a lot of aggression, a lot of resource guarding, a lot of serious behavioral problems have come from all of these different parts kind of being bundled into the one, and so yeah, it's difficult. And also, I think for the most part, I think 99% of the population were getting dogs for the right reason. And look, unfortunately, it actually was probably a good time for people to get dogs, because they did have time, whether it be COVID was 6 months or a year, they would have had the time to put into the dog. But it's all well and good having the time, but if you don't have the knowledge or the education on what to do with that dog, you're not getting the benefit.
And Mac, you mentioned the separation anxiety. There's also the lack of, like, for a lot of the pandemic, you look at, like, we were stuck within like 2 kilometers, 5 kilometers. You couldn't really get out and about and meet other people with dogs. There was all the social distancing. So there was that lack of socialization skills as well there for the dogs. Am I right?
Yeah, I think so. But I also think, like, socialization as well, you're going to put me on a tangent here, because socialization as well, culturally, in kind of more so the West, is our understanding of it is completely skewed, right? So I actually don't think that was that much of an issue, because I think more problems come from my experience, what I've seen, more problems come from over socializing the dog than under socializing the dog, which might be a somewhat hot take.
Could you elaborate on that a small bit, Matt, for Mac, for some of our listeners who
Sure.
wouldn't be overly familiar with it?
Yeah, for sure. So and the reason I say this is because I've made this mistake with my own dogs in the past, whether it's been dogs I've had from rescues, puppies, whatever. So I think the traditional, when someone says socialization, what they think is like puppies playing together, dog parks, dogs playing together, dogs having a great time, and all that stuff, right? And I think that is important, but too much of that is problematic in the long run, right? Because if you set your dog up, let's say you have a puppy, right? And the puppy goes to the dog park let's say 3-4 times a week or whatever, and gets to meet every dog it sees, right? Then you're setting your dog up for perhaps an unrealistic expectation of what life is. Yeah. So you condition the dog to perceive every dog as either a best friend or something very valuable, right? So when the dog sees another dog, the lights go off and he loses his mind and wants to go over run and play. That has consequences, because not every dog is friendly, that can hugely inhibit your training, because now you've set up circumstances where your dog maybe prefers other dogs than you, so values other things in the environment than you, values other people more, and other dogs, that kind of thing. So all of these things can inhibit your training. So I think the best, like 10-week-old puppies aren't going to learn anything from each other, right? So I'm not kind of coming from the hard, oh, never let your dog play with another dog. Absolutely. But what we need to remember is the need for a social group is important, right? So it's like people. So I'll have friends, family I'll go to dinner with, go for a drink with, whatnot. I won't go up to a random person on the street and force them to come to dinner with me. Yeah. So where we get problems is when that line is skewed. So we have, so say, for example, what I always tell my clients is like, let's get a social group, because we can't teach your dog to be a dog, right? So let's get dogs that can teach your puppy. Now, I know this isn't always possible, but if you have a friend or a family member with an older dog, you know, maybe let's say a nice 7-8-year-old, really chilled lab or something like that, a dog like that is going to teach your 10-week-old puppy a hell of a lot more than another 10-week-old puppy. Yeah. So that's the kind of dogs I'd want to get my dog around. And yeah, it's very important in socialization and exposure. You have a critical period, which is up to about 15, 16 weeks. So that period is really important. But also that period is where fears and phobias are born. So if you do go to the dog park within that period and you're entering a situation with a bunch of dogs that you don't know, and unfortunately, touch wood, this never happens to anyone, but if your puppy does have a bad experience, that will stick with them unless you really try and counter condition and overcome it, right? So the scope for things to go wrong are huge. Whether you get a nice dog with good genetics as a puppy, chances are they'll turn out fine. You know, yeah, you expose them, you know, we can talk a bit more about the exposure thing as well, but you let them interact with some dogs, you know, your neighbors, your friends, your family, sure. But then we want to make it all about you. Yeah, you want to make it all about me. So when we go outside and there is a dog across the road, my dog isn't losing his mind to want to go say hi and play, because that's a situation that the human has just completely created, and that creates frustration. And with frustration comes reactivity. Yeah? So what a nicer approach is we expose the dog, say, from a distance to a bunch of other dogs, and we have values. So we have the dog's food, we play, and we have to play with the dog, we train them, we engage them, we have a great time. So the dog learns to kind of ignore dogs and find value through you. Now, again, similar situation to what I said earlier, you now go to the park and there's dogs in the corner, you're with your dog, well, they have no interest from running away from you, yeah, because you've got the value, because you socialize them correctly. They haven't had bad experiences. They know how to play because you've interacted them with good dogs, and they're a social and, you know, kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Stable. Sorry, like a social stable member of society. And so there's a lot there.
That's brilliant, Mack. Mack, talk to us a small bit about your own training methods. Like, what would you describe your own training methods on a day-to-day basis to be?
Sure. So I think it depends on the dog, right? So say one dog is going to prefer, so firstly, it's important to understand what the dog's purpose is. And what the dog's purpose is to find reinforcement or to find reward, wherever they can find that. So reward for the dog could be anything, and not just something that we think it is. So it's whatever they perceive as reinforcing, the dog will do it. So it's quite a beautifully selfish way to live. So for me, my whole thing is about motivation, and I use a clicker an awful lot, but I condition the clicker to very, very high high arousal levels. So we get big kind of dopamine jackpots when we press the clicker. And I don't fall under a camp of like force-free methodology. I don't, but I also don't fall under the camp of like balanced training. So it really depends on the dog. I do believe that there is a time and a place for a fair, ethical, and humane consequence for a dog, so long as you've laid out the foundation and the dog knows what's expected and knows why something is happening. I think with certain dogs, benefiting from the full picture creates a lot more clarity and can be less stressful for the dog, and then kind of only helping them when they get something right. But to be honest, Darragh, I don't like grouping, labeling, in that context, and I just don't think there's one size fits all. I think everything is taught through reward, and everything is motivation. So the first thing I'm always doing is teaching people about the clicker and creating motivation and creating obedience. I have a real passion for kind of high level obedience and working dogs and things. So I just want to create the relationship with the owner, the relationship with the dog, so that not so that, you know, the person's angry at the dog or any of this, or they end up resenting it, so that they have a real relationship, and a relationship that's based on value and trust, and none of this kind of nonsense about alpha pack, any of that kind of crap, but one that's just based off the dog does not want to leave the owner. Because I think if you have that, and how that's built is just through motivation, right? It's through playing, it's through training. And if you have that and you have that foundation, it's very easy to teach things quickly, especially if the dog knows how to learn, right? So this is another thing. A lot of dogs don't know how to learn. And so with the clicker, I would do a lot of what's called free shaping, which I'm not sure how familiar people are with that. But it's essentially like the dog version of kind of, you know, if you play when you're a kid, like hot or cold, you know, like a hot, but there's no cold, there's just hot. So you kind of let the dog figure out the behavior with your clicker or your marker or whatever that might be. And so it teaches the dog how to learn. And once the dog kind of understands that, like I said, you can teach everything quite quickly. But I think it is, I think with training a dog, as cheesy as it sounds, it is a lifestyle thing. It's about how you raise them in that critical period we talked about, how they perceive the world, how much fun you have. Like I can bet if I go to any given context with my dogs, like no matter what's going around, they won't want to leave my side. You know, like there's nothing better than what we could be doing, because again, the dog's purpose is finding that reward. So they know in my pocket is either a food or their toy, right? So the expectation of reward is huge. So there's nothing outside of our circumference, and that could be more motivating. Now, of course, I let them go run around and be dogs and explore and all that stuff. But things like recall is never an issue because, again, of that expectation of reward.
That's excellent there, Mac. Mac, we often get questions in here on the Big Bark, and like we're not training professionals ourselves here, but we often get questions in from different dog owners. We got one in this week actually, and I might actually put this to you if it's okay, because I think it definitely kind of fits right up your alley. And it came in from John over on our Instagram page, and John asked, he said his dog has terrible recall, and what can he do to actually improve his dog's recall?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably in terms of like training issues, not behaviorally, but training, I think it's probably the most common, you know, and the dog runs over to other dogs or kids or people, and we're just yelling at them to get back. And then when the dog does come back, we say bold. So yeah, I think the thing, what needs to be laid out for recall, right, is you need a few pillars in place. I think there needs to be motivation, because motivation is what drives everything, right? So, the motivation to chase, let's say, a sheep, the motivation to chase a dog, to chase a ball, to chase a squirrel, whatever, that's all motivation, right? So there needs to be sufficient motivation to come back to the owner, and the dog must know when they're correct. So I think the pillars that need to be in place, I think the dog needs a marker, right? Either a yes or a clicker. And a marker, for anybody that doesn't know, is just a conditioned sound that tells the dog when they've done something correct. So with a clicker, click feed, is the most basic kind of conditioning process of that. So for me, when I start with recall, I first teach the clicker. So anytime the dog hears that click, they know they're getting paid. So we make the dog kind of crazy for that clicker. So we click, we run back, and we give big rewards. And so big handfuls of the dog's food. So I would start there, just building a lot of drive for the food, and with the clicker. So every time that you click, the dog runs to you. And so you want to get that at the point where if the dog's asleep in your house, you click, and they'll get up and run to you. And not that you want to be tormenting your dog that way, but that's the kind of level we want. And then what we want to do is, another pillar to this is the dog needs to know the command. So if it's come or here, So I always say the dog's name and then the command. So let's say, I don't know, Harvey, come, right? So we now have our clicker that's conditioned. So now we need to condition the command and teach what it is. So the dog needs to understand what these words or sounds mean. So I'll throw a piece of food away from me to get the dog away from me. And I'll do this in the garden or in the kitchen even. And when the dog runs away from me and gets a piece of kibble or whatever, I'll say the command, Harvey, come. He comes. The second he turns around, I'll click and I'll feed him. And I'll repeat that. So I'll throw food away, Harvey, come, click, feed. And I'll just repeat this just in the house and the garden. And I won't ever really call the dog outside for the first, again, depends the age of the dog. But when I'm practicing this, I won't bring it outside yet until, again, I know he's responding to the clicker and I know he knows what come means. Then the next step is practicing it, like all obedience is bringing it to the environment, because obedience is context dependent. So sit in the kitchen is very different from sit on Grafton Street, right? So I would then take the dog to maybe a quiet part of the park, not overstimulate him, and he'd be on a long line. And so he'd be on maybe like a 20-foot lead, and I just play with him. I just play tug, play fetch, and just have a good time, you know? And then occasionally, once or twice, I might say, Harvey, come, and click and pay him. But the three things, just to wrap up on this kind of elaborate way of teaching recall. Sorry, you're come to find out there's no one-word answers. And the things I'd have in place is I'd have a marker, I'd have a command, I'd have a long lead, and then I'd play. I can't stress enough how important play is. Back to what we said earlier, if you play with the dog, you will transform the relationship. How many times you go to the park, you look, all the dogs are all playing with each other and everyone's standing there taking pictures on their phone. You should come back from the park sweating, you know, come back sweating. So then when you call your dog, there isn't a situation where he doesn't come, because the chance of the payoff is so great. And that's why you need the clicker as well to tell him that there is a payment. Does that hopefully make sense?
That's very good advice there, Mac. And Mac, I'm just going to put one other one to you. It's actually, I was chatting with another dog owner not so long ago there, and their own dog is, when someone comes to the house, the dog is very protective, very like much barking, not no fear of biting or anything, but it's like it's his. He sees it as his territory, from what I can tell, but yeah, when he's out and about, like out meeting people that this guy would know, like he's very friendly. He's the complete opposite. So why is it that he's like that at home? Is it just a territorial thing?
Yeah, it could be. It could be. You know, it could be some kind of insecurity as well. And it could be, you know, the owners might have unknowingly reinforced it. You know, if like a lot of times, like you have what we call kind of like, I haven't coined this. Another dog trainer like said this, and postman syndrome, where like the postman comes up to the door, dog woof 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 woof, postman puts the letter in the letterbox and walks away. The dog thinks it's made the postman walk away. You know, he doesn't understand he's just dropping off a letter. So he just sees a man come. He barks and sees a man walk away. So it gets reinforced. So a lot of those behaviors, they're very difficult because it's normal. Dogs are territorial, and two, it constantly gets reinforced. It's the same with like fear reactivity or whatever, or fear aggression. Dog walking down the road, kicks off, dog across the street keeps walking. That dog A thinks he's making that dog keep walking. He doesn't have the logic to understand that that's just another dog out for a walk with his owner. And so why he's doing that, it's hard to say without seeing it. And could be territorial, could be insecurity, and could be reinforced sometimes. You just don't know without really knowing the dog, you know. So sorry, that's a bit of a not the best answer.
Look, I suppose like without seeing the situation for yourself, it is very hard to judge as well.
Yeah, it is. Like a lot of people will ask me for advice or tips and stuff on online, and I tend not to, because you're guessing without seeing a dog. You know, you really are. Like dog training isn't it's quite boring, and like it's just a lot of repetition, and not much can be fixed very quickly, and it's a process. And like anything, learning, you can't play guitar overnight. Like the dog is learning to deal with a different set of circumstances or something else. So these things take time. And so I kind of refrain from giving, like, obviously basic tips and stuff, I've no problem, but when it gets to severe behaviors like reactivity or resource guarding and that kind of thing, and it's so individual dependent, and the circumstances and context in which the dog lives in and the relationship, there's just so many variables at play. You know, it's really hard to say, oh, just do this and it's fixed.
Yeah, that's a very fair point. Listen, Mac, that's all the time we have today. So thank you ever so much for joining me on the Big Bark. Delighted to have you on, and like I said, it's been a long time coming. So delighted we got there at last.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks, man. Enjoyed it.
No problem at all. Thanks again, Mac. And that's all for this week. We will be back next week with our brand new format of the show. We're changing things up a good bit now. We're going to be adding different segments going forward. So let me just give you an idea of what we have. We're going to have a training segment which is called Clever Canines. We will have our health hub, which will be our health and vet advice. For feeding, which will be our pet nutrition advice, and that will be from one of the leading pet nutritionists in Ireland. Going forward, we will be, as always, bringing you the biggest news from the canine world. We didn't really have much news to report today, other than chat away about pups in the park, which is the biggest news that's coming up in Ireland over the next few weeks. Let's see, we will have our segment called Your New Best Bud, which is doggies looking for their forever home. We will have Dogs of the Week, where we'll be picking a different doggy each week from social media to talk about and like give them their little moment in the spotlight. We will have our Big Bark shout out to your birthday dog coming back. There will be regular competitions coming, and we have a new section which is kind of like an agony aunt, or like, I don't know what in God's name I'm going to call this. It is a new section where we will be taking texts or WhatsApp messages from our followers who want to ask questions to different pet professionals, and we'll put your questions, like we did with Mack there today, to different pet professionals. So if you want to chat to a vet, we will put your questions to one of our regular vet guests. If you want to chat about dog training issue, your dog misbehaving, your dog's food, anything you want to ask about, we will put it to our professionals for you. So that is a new segment that's coming soon. I will release all the details on that once I have the WhatsApp businessy stuff sorted out. I have no idea how to do that. I work in tech, but I'm a bit of a technological idiot at times, where like I can't keep up with today's tech. If you ask me what TikTok is, I wouldn't have the foggiest, lads. Anyway, it's that time of the show where I am rambling on a bit as per usual. So I'm going to leave you off of that. Remember to follow us on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. We are on TikTok, but I don't use it, as I said, because I haven't a clue, and I think it's kind of all teeny boppers and all that on that. Not really sure, to be honest. Be sure to check out the episode each week on Spotify, iTunes. If you've loved this episode, be sure to rate us. You could do that now on Spotify as well. Haven't figured out how to do that myself on any of the podcasts I listen to. I think you have to listen to 3 or 4 episodes, but any episodes you listen to, be sure to give us a 5-star rating if you like to on Spotify or on iTunes, and you can listen to us as well on our website. Find out all the information that you need to know on the bigbark.ie. Thanks again, guys, and listen, wishing you and your puppies a fantastic week ahead, and keep entering our competition on Instagram, the Big Bark Podcast, giving away tickets for you and 3 friends for Pups in the Park, and we are looking forward to that in a couple of weeks, where we will be meeting all of our favourite doggy people and all the doggy owners around Ireland. Okay, gotta stop off then. Have a good week. All the best. Good luck.
The Big Bark, listen up dog owners, is for you, all you canine lovers. It's your favorite podcast, The Big Bark, with your host Darragh and canine co-hosts Bruno and Milly. The Big Bark.